Yo, Katy. Is it I'm gonna say, is it McLevain?
Nope. You can just say Mac. I
Ugh,
request everyone
tell me,
does because
tell me, tell me,
I know
tell me.
it's hard. No, just it's Katy
It's not
Mac.
gonna happen. Damn. Okay, okay, okay. Rewind. Even though this is gonna be in the podcast for sure. Um, Katy Mac. Um, how are you? How are we? How are we?
Well, I can only speak on behalf of myself.
Yeah.
I'm doing okay.
All right. So I feel like we're both going through our own stuff in the world and in general, and I started telling you that from what I kind of see, and also just what I've seen in what you've been doing and the work that you've been a part of. Something that just came a word that came into my mind is resilience and perseverance. Just from even from our short conversation, and also listening to your interview with Charles. Just I feel like, so your story is basically from the music side. You've started in music and kind of grew out of it because you felt like it's not your lane, but you want to help other artists. Is that true?
I started playing music. Yeah.
Yeah.
I still very much consider myself in music, just
Oh yeah.
not playing it. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. But it converts itself, and that's a conversation I love having with people about that transition, and again that ability to pivoting from the artist thing, the kind of egoic act of I make the art and the art is mine and I'm putting it out to the world and it is going to be amazing and everybody's going to listen, and to being somebody going to the outside of it, in a way, to the outside of playing music, into pushing other people's music into tastemakers' hands, and into the insane works that you've been a part of. And that it's gonna all I'm gonna create a little seed for you with a bunch of branches that you can take whichever one you want. And you've created at some point like Dawn Patrol, which has its own beautiful definition. I'll let you speak into it, and I just want to understand how all these coincide from the moment you stop thinking, okay, well, I'm not gonna do the music thing. um, First of all, how did that hit everybody around you? How did it hit you? What was all that process like? And then to go from that into pitching other people's music and doing what you're doing now and helping artists and helping elevate women in the industry. How do all of these kind of connect in your world? I know it's a very big question. Just take it wherever you want.
Well, I mean, to answer the earliest part of the question, nobody batted an eye when I stopped playing music. I played upright bass, I played piano, and I played percussion. And so when I moved into a dorm room and didn't bring any of those instruments with me, no one was surprised.
Mm.
And it had always been a battle. Practicing was a battle in my household. Um, and so I don't think my parents were surprised at all. And people I was, in band with, like, I was not the best one, so I don't think anybody was surprised that I didn't pursue it. Um, and it was a long time before I started pitching music. So I probably spent a decade on the supervision side. So in that respect, I was pitching music to, the shows and my bosses and stuff. And it is always kind of like pushing it up to the next rung of the ladder. And if if you're the musician, you're pitching it to someone, and then if I'm the pitch person, I'm pitching it to the supervisor. Supervisor's pitching it to the director, but maybe it has to get through the editor, and then if the studio has to weigh in, and then who has the ultimate creative decision? Is it the studio? Is it the financier?
Mm.
There's no. I don't think anybody at any point in the process feels like they have the final say. I think everybody feels like this is
Wow.
what I think. Now I have to get 7 other people to agree with me. And if no one vetoes it, then we move forward. So I think that's something that's really misunderstood amongst musicians about kind of like the hierarchy and the process. And that's where I sort of started getting into wanting to have my own catalog and stuff. Was when you're on the supervision side, it's the exact same process pretty much as when you're on the pitching side, except you're representing the film person's interest, and on
Mm.
the pitching side, you're representing the music person's interest. And I love doing both. I still supervise, and I still have Dawn Patrol, and I love doing both of them. And I'm constantly thinking and being asked, like, well, would you maybe thrive more if you just picked one and focused on it? But I couldn't. Like the other would suffer if I couldn't kind of balance that out.
What do you think? What do you wish musicians would know about what you are doing?
Mm, so much. It's really interesting because I think that there's been this really big uptick in sync education.
Mm.
And so I've said these things, and I've been on panels with other people who've said these things. So I know that a lot of the information is out there. Um, People aren't really listening to it. People aren't taking it to heart. So that's one thing I really wish people would know, is that the information on how to do this well is available to you on the internet. Please find it and then do it. I mean, even look, this is not to just bash on people, but even my submission form for Dawn Patrol on my website, I have the instructions clearly right there next to my contact form, and I still get probably half the contact form submissions with weird information, or all the information is right there, and people will send me a contact form thing being like, how do I send you music? Like, that was it. Like, why didn't you use the contact form to send me the music, or they're sending me an email that is addressed to the wrong company because they're just churning them out, and they're not updating their copy paste from the last person they sent it to. And it's like, this is entirely a network based business. There are very few songs that are so unique and so specific and so perfect that you can be an uncontactable jerk and people will still use your music. Like, if you don't know how to send an email, if you can't send an email quickly, and if you're not very nice about it, people will move on, and so it's so very network based. And the just trying really gets you a long way. If you just have your contact form and you're spamming people with, can I contact 20 a day for 3 months? You're not going to find that best fit for you because you're not putting your best forward. You're not putting your best into it. So it's not going to attract the best fit for you. You're going to find someone else who's trying to take in 20 artists who don't care what catalog they go to every day, and that's going to be a disappointing fit for everyone. And hopefully you make some money that way, and if that's all that matters to you, I shouldn't really knock it, because there are people who do that and they would make a lot more money than I do. But I don't think there's any heart to it. I don't think there's any like meaning or purpose to it personally. And so that's what's important to me is like there's a lot of different ways out there to do it. So put out the kind of energy you want to get back in, and it'll it'll attract itself to you and you'll find that right fit. But when you're just blasting out to anyone and everyone impersonally and with no research and with no effort to really connect with that person, what they're doing. And you'll find that when you look at it more closely, you're like, oh, I spent all this time researching this person, and all I've learned is that I don't even want to work with them. I don't even want to email them. So I spent all that time researching, and the result I got nothing out of it. Like I set a goal for myself to email 10 people today, and I could only find like 3 who I even wanted to reach out to. And it's like, but eliminating those 7 is part of the work. So the 3 that you do send out, that's going to mean more.
Gem. You've already blasted me with a few. So I okay, I'll double click on a few things here. First of all, the email blast. Yeah, it's something that I feel like that's something that's pretty unanimous to all the information givers out there. It's like usually it's usually a bad practice to just email blast. Another thing that I want to touch on is the 10 emails thing, and you touched in a really sensitive spot in mine because I'm a very goal oriented person, and if I don't reach the number that I set for a day or whatever, I kind of get disappointed and bummed on myself. And that's just so dumb because I'll tell you, like with dog training, okay, like I told you I love dogs, I'm really into dogs. But what I've taken all these courses, and I feel like the biggest thing is with dogs and also with humans, but I feel like dogs are a good example from my world, is a few amazing repetitions from a dog that wants to do work with you are way better than 100 repetitions that the dog is bored and just has to do what you're telling them. And I feel like it is exactly the same, where you are eliminating what doesn't need to be there, which are the 7 reps of just like sending these emails, and making these 7 unwanted companies, so called, a success of itself, because now you know who you don't want to work with as well. So I love that kind of distinction you make there. I don't think that enough people make that distinction just like you made it. So that's huge. Thank you.
Absolutely.
um, another thing that stuck out to me is that you you're passionate about it. Okay, you're passionate about what you're doing, and you do it from the heart. I want to know if there was a time in your supervision career where you fought for a song or an artist, and what that looked like on your end.
I mean, yes and no. I think I fight for every song and every artist, but the minute I hit send on that email and turning it over to someone else, I have to switch it off because back to what I was saying at the top of like, even the people I'm sending it to aren't necessarily the decision makers. This has to go through so many rounds. And, I put my passion into finding options. Again, as I said, there's not one right song. It's not like there's just one fit. It's so subjective,
Yep.
the creative side. And so, it's not about like, oh, I have to find this this song has to get put there because that's just my ego, like there's no right or wrong answer. And if somebody else feels that a different song belongs there, then great. So for me, there have been, every single pitch I send, there's a song or a band that I'm like, this is so good. I can't believe I found it. I absolutely love this one. It's so moving. But then the minute I hit send on sending that link to the directors or whomever, it's like I almost like erase it from my memory, because if I had to, if I had to like sit there and hope that this was going to be the one, it's so rarely going to be the one. And so you just have to keep that band. It's more of a volume game, like we pitched it for this one and now we move on. And then we pitch it for the next one and we pitch it for the next one and we pitch it for the next one. And when the time is right, it will come.
Mm. Yeah, yeah, I hear you. It's just I sometimes hear stories about, supervisors working on a project, and exactly, I don't know if it's the ego, but it's like I got it, and then the editor goes like, nah, and then and then like you show him a bunch of other songs, and then at some point you bring that song that you loved back, and then suddenly they do love it, and it's just like there's so I feel like there are so many little things that have to get into place for something to happen. Um,
Absolutely.
and it's not necessarily about fighting for something, maybe as much as it is negotiating. I don't know. I don't know if that makes sense. But yeah, but I'm just interested in I mean, what does it look like for you? Like a very successful project for somebody like you? Does it just mean the song gets placed, or is there just something that makes you feel like, oh damn, I nailed it as a supervisor, as a catalog owner? Is there something like that for you?
I think it's the collaboration for me. I am the last person who should be a film director or showrunner. Like, I do not care about the big picture. I couldn't care less about making costume choices or like
100%.
poring over the timing on the delivery of a joke or something. You know what I mean? For me, it's like, even if the song doesn't work in the end, did somebody value the idea? Did we have fun talking about it? Did they go through the 7 to 12 songs that I sent and think, oh, that one's cool? When I pitch songs from Dawn Patrol to, like I just had something come up the other day where a supervisor reached out to me and said, hey, do you rep this song still? And I looked up when I sent it to him, and it was ages ago. And as it turned out, he didn't want to use that song, and he definitely didn't want to use it for the show I pitched it for. But what had happened was I pitched it to him. He, unbeknownst to me, thought it was good and sent it to the show. The editor on that episode liked it, held on to it. That editor has moved on to another series, and now they're using it in a scene for
Oh,
that show with another music supervisor. Now,
Jesus.
the scene could get cut. That placement still might never go through,
Mm,
but I know that I picked a song that not only the music supervisor liked, but the editor liked so much that he took it with him to another project. Like, that's a win for me. That could never result in a sync, and it could never result in any money,
mm,
but that's still huge. Like, that's the work I'm doing, And
mm.
people are evaluating sync based on the outcomes. Like, I've been with you for 2 years and I never got a sync placement. That might be the case, but maybe I turned 3 other people down the line into fans of yours. I'm
Right.
never going to see a dime for that. You might. I mean, maybe they'll get merch. Someone will go to a show, buy merch or something. You know what I mean? It might not result in a sync placement, but everybody liked the song and thought it was a good idea, and that's what I look for, because the actual like resulting placements, so many things can happen. You never know.
Mhm.
So, did I collaborate with people? Did I get on the same creative page with people? Did I nail what they were describing? Like, that's what makes me feel like the job was a success or not.
Yeah, it's like it's thinking macro, and I feel like I tend to think very small sometimes. At times, especially um, making so much music and thinking about little things as opposed to the big picture. Where something really awesome that happened was my song was pitched as the reference song. So people actually like made songs according to my song, and I was a bit bummed because why didn't you just take my song? But from the
Yeah.
other side of it, it's just like it may be in somebody's head right now where he whips it out and he's like, well, why don't we call the artist, or why don't we use that song down the line somewhere? And that can create a snowball effect by itself. So I resonate with that on so many levels, because I feel like what tends to really boggle me down is that thinking of, oh damn, I didn't get placements with them in 2 years, damn, or stuff like that, where it's more, as you said in the beginning, it's such a relationship based industry that y- you can never know really what hits when, because again there are so many variables, right, into this in this game.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I want to connect it with kind of the 360 that you do now, and I actually love the fact that you don't do one thing, because I think I believe deeply in palate cleansers. Me and a friend just made a Tori Amos track yesterday, which I have no business in making. I'm like, it sounded like crap to me, but just like I'm talking about like just palate cleansers, and I feel like doing a few things at a time can give a really great perspective, especially with something like art on something else.
Yeah.
So how do you kind of divide your time between Dawn Patrol, doing the projects that you do, supervising, and now also helping artists, which is a new thing that we're going to talk about. How do you how do you juggle these?
That's a great question. I'm still trying to figure out how to answer it myself. It's very easy on the busy days when there's a lot of stuff and I can be reactive to my inbox. I log in, I see these six things have to get done absolutely by today, no exceptions. That's when it's easy because the decision is made for me. So on the slower days, when I have to be proactive and I have to go, oh, I have seven different ideas bouncing around in my head. How do I pick one and then focus on it? That's really difficult. And it's a it's a moving target. I don't really have a good answer. I'm trying really hard to think about like, where do I want to be in a year and put everything I have to do. Like I just did a to-do list and I put everything down like, okay, so 2025 goals. What do I want to, hit the ground running with on January 1? And try and order things by importance based on like, well, this needs to be done sooner than later, and this needs to be done just by the end of the year. But I think that kind of, gosh, what I'm learning for me at least is I think that's where you set yourself apart, because that's when you have downtime. And for years I went, great, I have downtime, I'm gonna go watch TV. Bye. And so now it's like, okay, so I have some downtime. What am I gonna do with it? What is motivating me? What am I working towards? What do I want my life to be? And if I don't take this next, I have 2 hours to get myself closer to my dream life. What am I going to do with it? What does that look like? um, and for a really long time when I had jobs and I worked for other people, they determined what was important to me. And so when I had to make that switch and have my goals be self determined and set my own priorities, I immediately thought I had all this free time. And I was like, ooh, work life balance. It's a huge priority for me. I'm going to do this the chill way, I could have, and I did that for a very long time before I realized that, like, I'm just going to get to my goals that much slower if I don't work just a little bit harder at every opportunity I have.
Yep.
And so I don't know how to balance the different tracks, really. I think for me, they kind of all feed into the same overarching goal. I have my, like, when I'm 75, I would like to retire, and this is what I want to look back, and this is what I hope my career will have looked like. And so that's kind of the big picture, and all of these are just short term pieces of that bigger puzzle. And I fully expect that by the time I'm 75, that picture will have changed. But that's kind of the perspective I try to use now to figure out what the priority is and is it feeding that.
Yeah, it's all moving target. It's everything's it's a game of balancing for sure. Everything's a game of balancing.
Yeah, yeah. Like balancing. I love. I don't know if you've heard the podcast. Oh my gosh, what is it called? I'm gonna blank, and I love it. I listen to it all the time. Finding Mastery. I don't know if
Mhm.
you've ever heard that, but it's with Finding Mastery with Dr. Michael Gervais, and he's
Oh, he's
to
amazing.
quote his intro, he's a by trade and practice, he's a higher performance psychologist or something.
Yep.
And I love listening to his podcast and his guests,
His
and
voice is so chill. I love his
it is,
voice.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. But so I was listening to one of his episodes the other day, and he it was talking with his guest about balance, and he was like, I hate that term, balance. And I thought that's really interesting because I never really thought about it as like I hate balance, because it is balance, or it's almost more like it's cyclical because it's never balanced. It's not like I do
Right.
like 2 hours of everything every
Right.
day. I spend a month completely ignoring one really big chunk of my life,
Right.
and then I'm like, oh, now I have to like reshift my focus back to that. And it's not at all balanced, but I guess in the grand scheme of things, it is.
I think so. The thing that I feel, I feel what you're saying. It's not when people hear balance, they think center, and I think these are two different things. Whereas balance, when you're walking on a tightrope or not a tightrope, what's the name? Like a slack line.
Slackline. Yeah.
You're never really balanced, right? You're always balancing actively, right? So
Yeah.
what I mean by balance is that, yeah, today you're gonna be all in on dawn patrol, but tomorrow you're gonna like shift it a little to the center to be doing more of admin work, or like whatever that means for you, or tomorrow you're gonna pitch for a bunch of supervision projects that you wanna do, or it's just like when I think of balance, that's how I think of it. It doesn't have to be like, oh, I'm zen and I'm doing. That's how a lot of people like to be viewed, and that drives me crazy because it doesn't exist in my world, to be honest. And I've discovered that for me, it's again, it's an active act of constantly bringing back as much as I can to the center, but the pendulum just keeps swinging to
Yeah.
different places, but it doesn't stay in one place for too long, because if it does, then I'm completely off balance, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. I mean, I think it's definitely one of those tricky things. And when you're self-determined, when you're not answering to a team or a boss or something, finding that like center within yourself is, I mean, such a huge I'm still working on it. And so I have a huge respect for, in a whole new way, for anybody who's managed to do that for themselves. Because I did
Mhm.
not understand how difficult it was going to be until, I quit my job. I quit a job, and I was supervising kind of on the side, but it not super prolifically, and was also I had a day job, and then I quit the day job, and then it was COVID, and I started Dawn Patrol with a partner, and then he quit. And when he quit, there was no team left.
Mm,
And I probably honestly never would have even jumped into all of this on my own if I, so it probably works out for the best that I jumped in with someone who then, bailed and I
yeah,
was left
yeah,
free falling by myself. Because I never would have taken the leap otherwise.
yeah.
Because and I really would never have taken the leap if I had seen what was coming. And thank God I had no choice and was thrown into it clueless because it was really hard and I'm still struggling with it. And it's been one of the most rewarding things I've ever done for myself. So,
Mm. Thanks for sharing. Wow. I Yeah, something came up, and again, as you see, like I think I told you before we got on the podcast, it's just like this podcast gets into the weeds in a different way, and I feel like people get to know more than they get to know about you and what you do. They get to know about the amazingness of who you are, and that is it comes out in my opinion automatically when we start speaking, and that to me is where I find, it's courage. You didn't say it in that way, but that unknowing doing, it's kind of, you're bypassing your brain, which is saying no, this is dangerous, and you're going
yeah,
in with the excuse, oh, I'm going with a partner, which is it's a good excuse, right?
yeah,
It gives the feeling of a certain safety, but you have to trust when you do something like that, right? You know what I mean?
yeah,
Which is it really reminds me of like when I came to Bali, it was COVID, and I was like, I didn't have a lot of income, and I was like, well, let me try a few months and I'll see. I have some money for a few months. Then if I'm broke, like, well, I'll go crash at friends or something like that. Like I'll go back to the States or Israel or whatever and just like chill. And that got me to the next step, and now my balance is different. Like talking about, I love the word balance because we can get into it, but now the word balance is different for me. Now I balance things from here, from Bali, because I'm feeling more grounded here. But would I have done it, if I knew that the rug would be pulled under me in a certain, and I would have two dogs, which I'm taking care of one of them, like, would I do it at the time?
yeah,
No, I would feel super scared.
yeah,
um and and this is the thing about, setting goals for 75 is fine, but understanding that the goalpost keeps moving, especially in the society that we live in today, where things are not fixed and nothing is promised to nobody. um and we are basically promised a longer life than our ancestors were. Being able to navigate that, and with a certain amount of grace, and just like make friends and be a good person to work with, and enjoy this whole shit show that is life. It is super duper complex, and I feel like that's not given credit to. People don't give that credit, the fact that, yeah, like life is not a fucking Instagram reel. You know what I
yeah,
mean? So, yeah,
yeah, yeah. I feel that for sure. Of like, we really don't talk a lot about just like thriving in the messiness, sort of. We
exactly.
we focus on sort of the highlights, and then everything else is expectedly a letdown. But like most of life is the everything else.
But also, that's the name of your company, which let's get into. I mean, Dawn Patrol. That's what it is, right? Like it's exactly the definition of it. And can you please like talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, Dawn Patrol, my former partner and I were trying to figure out names for the company, and we were both really into outdoor adventure sports. And Dawn Patrol is a term that people use in like surfing, or he was big into backcountry skiing. And so when got to get to work or want to just beat the crowds, and you go out at dawn because that's when the conditions are the best and you can quick get a session in before the rest of the day starts and the rest of life kicks in. That's kind of it's kind of where the name came from. And you know, it's it's something that on my own I strive for. I think he and I were a good influence on each other in a lot of ways. And kind of hearing about his adventures inspired some of my adventures, and then inspired back some of his next adventures and stuff. And so we were really good. That was really great. We were able to play off each other because he lived in Idaho, so it was like entirely over the phone or over Zoom. Um, so we were never, well, not never, but hardly ever doing these things together in person. And so it was very like, it's good to have stories about the different mountain adventures he got up to while I was off in the ocean and stuff. And it collectively felt like it would be a good thing that we could both identify with and that we wanted to bring into music as well. And I'm always looking for ways to tie adventure, action sports into the music industry, but it's not super common.
Mm, yeah, I'm right now I can't surf anymore. Right now my dawn patrol is the walk with the dogs. So like
Yeah.
we do a walk real early, and that's basically the blessing of the morning, and sets the tone for the day for sure. So I used to go surfing a lot at dawn. So that's a big thing. That it is like it resonates in a lot of ways. So 100%. Let's talk about let's shift this into your new chapter now, which is
Yeah.
you're helping artists. It's like you haven't helped enough artists till now. So what does that look like in your
Yeah. So, I mean, I think I'm hoping 2025 will be exciting. I want to expand into some other harmonious areas of the music industry that maybe aren't directly related to sync but support sync. So we're starting with social media marketing because that's one of the things I see time and time again. I have super amazing talented artists on my roster, and they're like, "Oh yeah, I released a song last month," and I was like, "You did? How would I have known about it?" And they're like, "Well, I put up a single post because something in the news cycle took over and bummed everybody out, and you didn't want to spend time on Instagram." And I get it, like that happens, but social media is one of these amazingly free platforms that we have accessible to anybody to promote music or promote your community or your message or your values or whatever you might want to be building. And so, I think that's one of the things like for sync. What I love about sync is that it's not super time dependent. Like if your song is 2 years old, that does not rule you out for being for landing a placement. You're probably not going to make it on, most Apple playlists after
yeah
2 years. But you can get a sync whenever. But when I've been working with independent artists for this many years now, and it's one thing that I keep seeing over and over again is like, the music's great, but you got to let people know that it's out there. Unless you really are just making this music only for yourself, like, how are people going to know if you don't tell them? You have to go tell them. You have to tell people that it's here. And so, social media can be super draining. And again, as we've talked about at length, like when you have to do anything on your own, it is so much harder. So, we're starting with branching out into this social media marketing plan where we go through an entire branding exercise to start people dialing in on like, a lot of people have never thought comprehensively about like, well, what are my messages and what is the core themes that I want to keep introducing so that it's comprehensive and that people can follow along. People have never really taken that sort of macro look at their own content because it's all in their head. They're like, oh, well, obviously it makes sense to them because it's all going on internally. And so then sometimes they put stuff out, and to them, there's a through line, but they've never really maybe taken a look at what it looks like from the outside. So we go through all that. And then we make a 5-week plan. This is centered primarily around new releases. So we make a 5-week plan, 2 weeks pre release, a week during release, and then 2 weeks post release. Plan out all the content, give templates for all the content because, you know, again, like what keeps breaking my heart is having amazing music, seeing someone post about it a few times and then having it die off and being like, oh, there was so much more that you
Yeah.
could have done there. And so what we want to do is create sort of like a system so that when people have those hard days, when the dog needs an especially large amount of attention and you're like, I do not have the time and energy to, come up with this thing, or, I just can't stand to scroll through my feed or whatever, like, you can go to this, you can have a plan. And if you have a great day, awesome. Churn out the next week of content, put some extra flourishes on it, add your own touch. Like, by all means, like, what we're trying to put forward for people is not like, hey, we said do this, so you have to do this. It's supposed to be like the safety net. Like, we want to see you do absolutely everything, but at the very least, we're going to put this together for you so that the opportunity doesn't get missed. Because I think that's the other thing too, is that when people are promoting themselves, it's so nerve-wracking to be like, I'm going to talk about myself for 5 weeks, and
Mm,
that can be so, like, I get it. As a small business owner, I have to do that for myself a bunch, and it's uncomfortable, so we just want to kind of create like a team and like a little bit of a structure and kind of make you feel like, you're this is content that people want to hear, people want to know about it, they can't wait to get your music. And so these are the kinds of things that you might want to tell them, so that every artist can kind of make the most of the days, the months, and who knows how many dollars they've spent to have this song ready to put out to the world. Like, then you got to tell people it's there.
100%, 100%. I love that, and I have a few people I want to send your way, and just yeah, I have a few connections in mind. We'll speak after this, but
Awesome.
I love this. I feel like we'll end this here and kind of let people sit with all the information, the amazing information that you brought forward. Katie, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you for having me. This is a great conversation.